Good afternoon, and welcome to our presentation on how assessment awarded grades will be given to students in Year 11 and Year 13 at Exmouth Community College in the summer of 2021. We will need, as teachers, to provide an overall grade in each subject, and we will be making a holistic judgment of each student's performance on a range of evidence relating to the subject content that has been delivered by their teacher. Last year, the college was asked to award centre assessment grades. These were forecasts, and therefore this year we are calling the grades assessment awarded grades because they are based on the content that has been delivered rather than the predictions that we were asked to last year. So this is a subtle change in what schools are being asked to do. We have also been asked to make sure that the grades we award are no harder or easier than in previous years. And we have also been asked to ensure our quality assurance processes make sure that the process is fair and equitable for all of our students. The guiding principles to this process will first and foremost be around the mental health and well-being of our students and our staff. We know that this period of time is really difficult and worrisome for both the students and their families. And hopefully we can rectify some of those worries by being really clear in terms of the process and able to reassure students they will be treated fairly. But we are really conscious that this will be a very difficult period of time for some of our students. We also want to make sure that students can secure the progress they require for their next step. And a quick reminder here that if you haven't yet applied for Post-16 at Exmouth Community College, if you could do so as soon as possible, that would be really good. Many students already have, and that's great so that we can make sure that we get the subject choices that those students want for September. So please, if you haven't applied yet, if you can get your applications in as soon as possible, that would be really great. If you don't know how to do that, please contact the Post-16 office in the Telford block. But it is about securing the progress for all students to their next step, whatever that might be. We need to make sure that the process is fair and equal for all students so that everybody has an opportunity to obtain the best grades possible across a range of evidence that they can produce. We also need to ensure that our staff are well trained, and we're very lucky to have a very skilled staff who already work closely with lots of other schools to ensure that we have the expertise and then the consistency of application to make sure that the grades are awarded fairly. And finally, as I referred to earlier, we know that this is a really worrisome time for you and your families and your children. And we want to be as effective as we possibly can be in terms of our communication, because we believe that if you understand the processes that we are being asked to go through, then you can trust those processes to come up with the best grade possible for your child. So in terms of the types of evidence that we can use to generate an assessment awarded grade, it's very broad. We can use assessment materials that are produced by the exam board, and more are going to be produced after Easter, which we may well choose to use with students. We can choose to use non-assessment non-exam assessment work, or coursework as it used to be known, even if that hasn't been fully completed, to help us decide on an appropriate grade. Or we can use classwork, homework, internal tests, mock exams where we have them, or indeed even records of students' capabilities and performances over the course of subjects such as music, drama and PE. So there is a broad range of evidence that we can bring into play to award the final grade that a student will achieve. What we're aiming to do in our school is to come up with a minimum of 5 assessment captures or assessment baskets of evidence that will form an assessment portfolio for each student. To allow that to happen and to give us enough time to do that and avoid overloading students and making them stressed or anxious, we won't be teaching any new content on any course after Friday the 19th of March. And that will allow students to just focus on revising and revisiting the work that they have already completed. The captures, those 5 captures as a minimum, can be made up of a range of assessments, as I've described earlier, from across the whole course. Some of those will be high control, So that might be under test conditions with a mark scheme, with staff trained before they mark it, with moderation and standardization procedures, which is pegged to how the exam board would grade the exam as well. Or it could be more low control, such as some homework or classwork, which very often students will already have in place. Some students might require more than 5 captures of evidence. It may be that some of their assessments don't fit in with where we believe that student might be, or their evidence isn't representative of the grades that we think this child is able to achieve. And therefore, we can do more evidence if we don't think that evidence that we currently have is robust or accurate enough. Students will also be aware when the evidence is going to be used that we're collecting. We want the process to be as open, as transparent to the students and to families as it possibly can be. Of course, we have to remember, though, we're not allowed to discuss with you what that final grade will be. As I said at the outset, the difference between this year and last year is that we are only able to provide evidence from areas of the course that students have already been taught. We are fortunate in some respects in that we had relatively few breaks from learning due to COVID and self-isolation. We unfortunately weren't able to do a mock examination period. That was due to take place in January, and of course we went into lockdown. But that does mean that our students in year 11 and 13 have covered a huge amount of their course, and more than many schools out there. And so we do already have in place quite a lot of evidence that we can use. And that evidence and those assessment grades can only be based on the material that has already been taught. As I said earlier, assessments might look different for different students. They might also look different in different subjects. We, as I say, have got a very experienced and specialist set of subject leaders who have been working quietly away in the background for some time now to assemble the very best evidence for each and every student. And that might look different in maths to, say, what it might look like in English or to what it might look like in PE. Underpinning that process, though, is the robustness of that system, of that process, and the evidence and commitment to make sure that everyone is treated fairly and that no student's achievement is devalued through the processes that we have to follow. And that's paramount to us. Because we didn't complete mock exams, that's great in terms of the amount of content we've covered, but it does mean that we are missing some higher control assessments within our portfolio of evidence. Those higher control assessments are important because it allows us to peg the grades that we are awarding to national standards and what the exam boards view as grade 9 work or A-star work, depending on whether you're in year 11 and 13. So we are going to put in place some mini assessments, and I'll talk about those in a moment. However, students should be aware they already have a lot of evidence over the past 18 months of their course, and the evidence that students produce over the coming weeks will only add to that evidence. So all students can do right now is to focus on working hard, on making sure that where staff are providing feedback, that students act on that feedback and that they are revisiting and reviewing their work and revising that work to make sure that it is really secure knowledge that they hold. In terms of the mini assessment window, we do have a small opportunity now before the assessment awarded grades must go off to the exam boards. The date for that is the 18th of June. So everything has to be completed by the 18th of June. And prior to the 18th of June, all of the grades, every single one of them for every single student has to go through our quality assurance program. And so that process has to start by the 14th of May. Our intention, therefore, is to have a period of time where we will put in place some high control assessments using mark schemes, making sure it's standardized with staff trained beforehand on the mark scheme in order to enhance the evidence that we already have in place. These aren't mocks. These won't be carried out in large venues. We're aware that that would cause a lot of stress and anxiety for some of our students. So they will be carried out in normal lessons, but all at the same time. So nobody will be disadvantaged by sitting the paper earlier or later than anybody else. At the moment, we're putting together a timetable for that. As you can imagine, it's quite a complicated business. And so as soon as we have that timetable finalised, we will publish that. So there will be a 3-week window of mini assessments that are carried out between Monday, the 19th of April and Friday, the 7th of May. Some subjects may have more mini assessments than others, and that just depends on the nature of their subject, or it depends on the assessments that they already have in place. So we will continue to focus on getting that ready. In the meantime, as I say, for students, they should just continue to focus on their work and making sure that the work that they've already done, they really understand very, very well. Once we've completed all of those 5 assessments, as I say, for most students it will be 5. For some students it may well be more, and for some subjects it may well be more. We will then go into the quality assurance process. Now, as it is for the students and for you as their family members, it is for us as well. We want our students to get the best possible grade that they can. We know how important these grades are to them. And we have also massively committed to our students, in many cases in year 13 over the past 7 years with them. And so are really deeply invested in getting this process right for each and every one of them. We need to therefore make sure our quality assurance process is really thorough and that it's fair, and that we are not being too generous, and that the grades this year are no harder or easier to achieve than in previous years. All schools will be monitored, and they will have drop-in inspections by Ofqual and the exam boards to make sure that we are being fair to all of our students and to all of the other students across the country, so that we are not being too lenient or indeed too strict. In terms of the sorts of things that we'll do during the quality assurance process, well, firstly, subject areas will have training in place and standardization processes in place. When they award a grade, 2 teachers in the subject will sign off that grade and scrutinise the evidence portfolio for each student. Once they've submitted that, our data and assessment team will compare performance of this cohort to previous cohorts to make sure we're not being too harsh or too lenient, and other staff, senior staff, will then scrutinise the evidence. Eventually, once it's gone through that process, I have to sign off the evidence as the principal and the head of the exam centre. We will also carry out an equality impact assessment, which will ensure fairness to students with special educational needs and those entitled to exam access arrangements or other protected characteristics. It is possible that the circumstances will change. On the right-hand side of the screen is a recent update from Ofqual, and you can see that further guidance is due to be with schools by the end of March, and that guidance will include things like key dates, grading, access arrangements, special consideration, and so on. So this is going to change over the coming weeks, so please keep checking your emails as well as our website and social media. And finally, just to reassure you, we really understand that this is going to be worrying, possibly for you and your child. We will do the very best we can for each and every one of our students. But if you have any concerns at any point in the process, please do not hesitate to get in touch with us. We don't want any surprises as we go through. We want you to be fully informed about what we have to do in order to award the grades accurately and fairly to all of our students. So we therefore want you to feel part of that process and that you understand the process. We are told by Ofqual that most results will be issued the week beginning the 9th of August. So we'll provide you with more details on that shortly. And at the moment, the government have also not decided on what the last date for students in school will be. So as soon as we know that, we will let you know that as well. We believe that in many respects, the systems that we're putting in place this year, which will avoid a final set of really high stakes exams in large venues, which we know some students find really difficult, will actually be probably in many respects more fair than it has been in previous years. And so we're approaching this with optimism and with a belief that we can do our best for your child. Many thanks for listening. I apologise, it was quite a long presentation, but hopefully you can play that back with a cup of coffee. And as I say, if you've got any concerns about any of that or any queries, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us at the college. Many thanks.